My daughter-in-law rushed out and forgot her cell phone on my sofa. When I decided to return it that night, the device vibrated in my hands. What I saw left me breathless. On the screen was the photo of my husband, who had died a year ago in a supposed accident. A message popped up, exposing a dark secret I could never have imagined. But before I continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. It all started on a Sunday afternoon that seemed perfectly normal. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had come to visit me, as she did once a month since Alexander's death. Those visits always left me exhausted. Behind the polite smile and sweet words, there was something calculating in the way her eyes scanned every corner of the house that once belonged to her son. "Sophia, are you eating enough? You look so thin," she commented as we had tea in the living room. Her words sounded concerned, but her gaze was evaluating me as if I were an intruder. "I'm fine, Eleanor," I replied automatically, the same response I had given for a year to anyone who asked how I was after losing my husband in a car accident. The silence that followed was filled only by the sound of the spoon tapping the cup. She checked her wristwatch for the third time. "I must be going. I have engagements," she finally announced, standing up. I walked her to the door, sighing with relief internally. Watching the luxury car drive away with her personal chauffeur, Phil, I closed the door and let out a deep sigh. I returned to the living room to collect the cups when I noticed something gleaming between the sofa cushions where Eleanor had been sitting. It was her cell phone, a new, expensive model with a personalized leather case. I picked up the device and rushed to the window, but the car had already turned the corner. I tried to call her, but realized her number would be on the very phone I was holding. "I'll return it later," I decided, placing the phone on the coffee table. The afternoon passed slowly. I organized some of Alexander's documents that I still needed to sort out. Insurance papers, some pending contracts. Since his death, the company he built had passed into Eleanor's hands. She insisted that I had no experience to manage the business, and in my fragility those first few months, I just nodded and signed the documents that left me sidelined from the life we had built together. Around the hour of 9 o'clock in the evening, as I was getting ready to take the phone to Eleanor's house, the device began to vibrate on the table. The screen lit up and my heart stopped. The photo that appeared was of Alexander. My Alexander, with that contagious smile, wearing the blue shirt I had given him on our last wedding anniversary. My hands were trembling so much I almost dropped the phone. A message notification flashed. With a lump in my throat, I unlocked the screen. Fortunately, Eleanor had shown me the unlock pattern once during an emergency at the hospital. The message was from a contact saved under the name Alexander. "Transfer concluded. Same amount as always. When can we meet? I'm tired of this game." I felt my body freeze. What was this? Why would Eleanor have her own son's contact saved on her phone a year after his death? And who was sending messages from this number? With a racing heart, I opened the full conversation. There were dozens of messages exchanged over the past few months, all about money transfers, secret meetings, and mentions of an accident that had to remain a secret. "The silence money has arrived. You know no one can know about the accident," read one of the older messages. My legs gave out and I needed to sit down. A chill ran down my spine as a terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. Alexander's accident hadn't been an accident? Was my mother-in-law paying someone to keep secrets about something? I started frantically searching the phone, looking for more clues. In the photos, I found screenshots of bank transfers to a person named Jamie Lincoln. In the emails, drafts addressed to a P, which I suspected was Phil, the chauffeur. In one of these drafts, I read something that took my breath away. He suspected. I can't let him talk. Resolve it like last time. While I tried to process what I was discovering, the phone vibrated again in my hands. It was a call from the same contact, Alexander. Without thinking twice, I answered and put it on speaker, but I didn't say a word. After a few seconds of silence, a feminine voice cut through the air. "Eleanor? Why aren't you speaking? Are you afraid someone will discover our secret?" I hung up immediately, my hands shaking and my breath shallow. That voice was cold, controlling, and that woman, whoever she was, knew something about Alexander's death. In that moment, as the pieces began to click into place in my mind, the doorbell rang, loud, insistent, desperate. I looked through the peephole and saw Eleanor standing on the threshold, her face contorted in an expression of panic I had never seen before, and I knew in that instant that my life was about to change forever. My heart pounded against my chest as I watched Eleanor through the peephole. Her normally controlled expression was distraught, the panic evident in her wide eyes and the way she pressed the doorbell insistently. Behind her, I could see the dark car parked with Phil at the wheel. For an instant, I froze. The cell phone in my hand seemed to weigh a ton. Should I open the door? Should I confront her? Quickly, I hid the phone in the pocket of my robe and took a deep breath, trying to compose my best expression of normalcy. "Just a minute," I shouted, pretending I was busy. When I opened the door, Eleanor practically pushed her way inside. "Sophia, darling," she said in a strangely strained voice, "I think I left my cell phone here. Did you see it?" Her eyes darted around the room frantically. They were no longer the calculating eyes that watched me with disdain. They were the eyes of someone desperate, in a panic. "Cell phone?" I repeated, trying to buy time. "I didn't notice anything, but I can help you look." She didn't respond, going straight to the sofa where she had been sitting. She violently pulled off the cushions, throwing them onto the floor. "I'm sure I left it here," she muttered, more to herself than to me. I watched her rummage through the living room, feeling the weight of the device in my pocket. The woman in front of me was no longer my immaculate and restrained mother-in-law. She was a person capable of conspiring against her own son, a killer. "Maybe it fell in the car," I suggested, keeping my voice steady even though my whole body was shaking. She turned to me abruptly. Her eyes studied me, suspicious. "We already checked the car," she replied curtly. "Sophia, are you sure you didn't see my phone? It is very important." It was then I made a decision that would change everything. I looked directly into her eyes and said, "Actually, yes, I found it. I was just about to take it to your house." A brief relief crossed her face, quickly replaced by caution. "Where is it? Give it to me now." She held out her hand, impatient. "First," I said, surprising both of us with my firmness, "I want to understand why you have Alexander's number saved on your phone and why someone is sending messages from that number a year after his death." The blood drained from Eleanor's face. Her outstretched hand trembled and then dropped to her side. For an instant I thought she would faint. Then, as if a mask were being replaced, her expression hardened. "You read my private messages?" Her voice was an icy whisper. The phone rang. I saw my husband's photo on the screen. I responded, every word loaded with a rage I didn't even know existed inside me. "Who is Jamie Lincoln, and why are you paying her? What really happened to Alexander?" Eleanor took a step toward me, and I instinctively backed away. "You don't know what you're talking about. Give me the phone now and forget what you saw. For your own good, Sophia." That sounded like a threat, and it was. I realized it by the way her eyes narrowed, calculating something. She glanced briefly toward the window where the car with Phil was waiting, and back at me. "No," I replied, surprising myself with my courage. "I won't give anything back until I know the truth. Alexander didn't die in an accident, did he? What did you do to him?" She stood motionless for a long moment, as if considering her options. Then her lips curled into a cold smile I had never seen before. "You were always naive, Sophia, believing in that facade of a perfect marriage. Alexander was about to ruin everything I built. He discovered things about the business that needed to stay buried. He was going to report me, you know. My own son." The words spilled out of her like venom, and each one struck my heart like an arrow. "Then you ordered him killed?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "I protected what is mine," she replied simply, as if discussing any business decision. "And now you are in my way too. Do you really think you can do anything against me? I'm the one who controls everything now." In that instant, I heard the sound of the back door opening. Phil had entered from the back, while Eleanor distracted me. Panic consumed me. They had come to silence me, just as they did Alexander. "Help!" I screamed instinctively, running toward the front door. Eleanor tried to grab me, but I managed to dodge her. Phil emerged at the entrance to the living room, blocking my escape toward the kitchen. I was trapped. "There's no use screaming, Sophia," Eleanor said with terrifying calm. "No one will hear. And even if they do, what will they see? Just a distraught widow having a nervous breakdown. A tragedy, but predictable after everything that's happened." Phil approached slowly with what looked like a syringe in his hand. My eyes desperately scanned the room, searching for an exit, a weapon, anything. "It will be quick," my mother-in-law continued. "Then we'll find your body, an overdose maybe. How sad that you couldn't get over your husband's death." It was then I made the only possible decision. I pulled the cell phone out of my pocket and held it up. If anything happens to me, the police will receive all the messages. I already forwarded them to my email and to friends. It was a lie, but it was the only chance I had. Eleanor hesitated, her eyes fixed on the device in my hand. "You're lying," she said, but there was doubt in her voice. "Do you want to risk it? I have copies of everything. The transfers to Jamie, the emails to Phil, the messages about the accident. What do you think the police will think?" Phil stopped, looking at Eleanor for guidance. She seemed to be calculating her options, a vein throbbing in her forehead. "Phil, take her phone. Verify if she actually sent anything." The chauffeur moved toward me, but in that instant I did something I didn't even expect. I ran to the window and opened it with a sudden movement. "One more step and I throw the phone into the street," I shouted, holding my arm out the window. We were on the second floor and there were people passing below. Eleanor froze. "Sophia, be reasonable. Let's talk like adults." Her tone changed completely, now trying to calm me down as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "It's over, Eleanor. You're going to tell me exactly what happened to Alexander, or this phone will fall into the hands of the police." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with tension. I saw the look Eleanor exchanged with Phil, a look that said everything. They couldn't kill me there, not at that moment, not with evidence that could escape. "Phil, wait in the car," she finally ordered. The chauffeur hesitated but obeyed, leaving through the back door. When we were alone, Eleanor sat on the sofa, suddenly looking aged. "What do you want to know?" she asked, defeated. "Everything," I replied, still holding the phone tightly. "Starting with who Jamie Lincoln is." "Jamie Lincoln," Eleanor sighed, uttering the name as if it were a curse. "She was Alexander's partner in a side project, an enterprise he kept hidden from me." Even with the phone firmly secure in my hand, I sat in the chair opposite, maintaining my distance. My whole body was on high alert, ready to run if necessary. "What kind of project?" I asked, trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle that was my husband's secret life. "Real estate, a development for affordable housing," she replied with disdain. "Alexander always had those philanthropic ideas. He believed he could build quality homes for low-income people and still make a profit. Nonsense." That sounded exactly like the Alexander I knew and loved, always concerned with making a difference, with using business for something beyond just profit. It was one of the reasons I fell in love with him. And what does that have to do with his death? Eleanor adjusted herself on the sofa, as if carefully choosing her words. "Alexander discovered irregularities in the main company's accounts, substantial diversions. He was determined to do a complete audit." Diversions that you made, I completed, finally understanding. She stared at me coldly. Business is complicated, Sophia. You would never understand. I built this empire decades ago doing what was necessary. Alexander wanted to throw everything away because of some financial shortcuts. So you ordered him killed, I accused, feeling the rage surge. Your own son. Don't be dramatic, she retorted, but she didn't deny it. It was a necessary adjustment. He was going to report me, destroy everything I built. The day before his death, we had a terrible argument. He threatened to take compromising documents to the police. Every word of hers was like a stab. I remembered that night. Alexander had come home agitated, worried. He said we needed to talk about something serious, but that first he wanted to organize some documents. The next morning he died in what everyone believed was a car accident when the brakes failed on a downhill road near Chicago. How did you do it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A cold smile crossed Eleanor's face. I didn't dirty my hands, if that's what you're asking. Phil took care of the technical details. He has contacts in the mechanics world. It was fast, I think. Alexander didn't even realize what was happening. The ease with which she spoke of her son's death disgusted me. How could anyone be so cold, so calculating? And Jamie? How did she find out? That sly woman! Eleanor practically spat the words. After Alexander died, I found the documents for his project. I tried to take control, but she had proof of the partnership. She started asking questions about the accident, hinting that she knew something. To keep her quiet, I had to pay. The pieces were beginning to fit together. The messages, the transfers, everything made a terrible kind of sense now. And why keep her contact under Alexander's name and photo? I asked, still confused about that detail. A sentimental slip, perhaps, she replied with a shrug. Or just a reminder of the reason I'm paying that woman. I looked at the phone in my hands, the evidence of a horrific crime, of a conspiracy that had taken Alexander from me, the man I loved, killed by his own mother to protect dirty business. I'm taking this to the police, I declared. Eleanor laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. And what exactly are you going to say? That you invaded my phone? That you read private messages? The messages are vague, Sophia. Nothing in there is an explicit confession. Will it be your word against mine? An emotionally unstable widow against a respected businesswoman? I have the bank transfers, the emails to Phil, I countered. Legitimate transfers to a business partner, emails that could mean anything, she cut in. Not to mention I have the best lawyers money can buy. A heavy silence fell over us. She was right. I realized it with despair. Even with the phone, it would be difficult to prove anything concrete. I needed more, a clear confession, irrefutable proof. What do you want, Sophia? Eleanor asked, suddenly pragmatic. Money. I can be generous. A lifetime annuity, perhaps? Or would you prefer a share in the company? We can reach an agreement. She was offering me a bribe. She wanted to buy my silence, just as she bought Jamie's. As if she could put a price on Alexander's life, on my love, on justice. I want the truth, I answered firmly. And I want justice. Eleanor stood up, elegantly adjusting the expensive clothes she wore. The truth rarely brings peace, Sophia, and justice is a relative concept. Think about my offer. You can have a comfortable life, or you can destroy yourself trying to fight an impossible battle. She walked to the door, stopping before leaving. I'll let you keep the phone for now. Consider it a gesture of good faith. When you're ready to be rational, call me. The door closed softly behind her, leaving me alone with my chaotic thoughts and a cell phone full of dark secrets. I spent hours sitting in the living room, mentally reviewing every word of our conversation. Eleanor was right about one thing. It would be almost impossible to prove anything with just the messages and emails. I needed more. I needed to find Jamie Lincoln. With trembling hands, I picked up Eleanor's cell phone again. There were dozens of messages exchanged with the contact saved as Alexander. If Jamie was on the other end of those messages, maybe there was something that could help me find her. I went back to the beginning of the conversation, carefully reading every exchange. After almost an hour, I found what I was looking for. In one of the older messages, Jamie mentioned a meeting at a coffee shop downtown, the Daily Grind. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A place she frequented. Maybe the employees knew her. Maybe they could give me more information. I looked at the clock. Almost midnight. The coffee shop would be closed, but I could go in the morning. I didn't have much time. Eleanor had let me go this time, but I had no doubt that she would already be planning how to silence me permanently. As I prepared for sleep, something I knew was impossible that night, an idea began to form in my mind. If Jamie was blackmailing Eleanor, it meant she had something concrete, some real proof of the conspiracy, proof that I needed to find. The Daily Grind, in the Wicker Park neighborhood of Chicago, was exactly as its name suggested, a cozy place where the smell of freshly ground coffee mingled with the murmur of conversations. I sat at a strategic table from where I could observe the entrance while pretending to read a book. I had slept very little, tormented by nightmares where Alexander called out to me, asking for help while getting further and further away. I ordered a strong coffee and watched the employees. Which of them might know Jamie? After a few minutes, I decided on the direct approach. I called over a middle-aged waitress who seemed to have worked there for a long time. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Jamie Lincoln. Do you know if she comes around here often?" I asked, trying to sound casual. The waitress studied me with curiosity. "Jamie? Yes, she's a regular customer. She comes almost every morning around the hour of 10 o'clock a.m. She always orders a macchiato and sits at that corner table." She pointed to a table partially hidden by a plant divider. My heart raced. "Thank you. She owes me some money and I lost her contact." I lied, trying to justify my interest. The waitress smiled, clearly unconvinced by my story, but too professional to question. "Well, it's 9:45. If you wait a little, maybe you'll get lucky today." I thanked her and returned to my table, now nervous about the possibility of finding Jamie so soon. What would I say to her? How would I approach the subject without scaring her? She might be dangerous or involved in Alexander's death in some way I didn't know. Exactly at the hour of 10 o'clock 5 minutes, the coffee shop door opened and a woman entered, tall, elegant, with a well-cut suit and her hair in an impeccable bun. She moved with a natural confidence, greeting the employees like old acquaintances. Something about her vaguely reminded me of Eleanor, the same haughty posture, the same air of authority. I watched her place her usual order and head toward the corner table. I waited for her to settle down before getting up, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone in the coffee shop could hear it. With steps I tried to keep steady, I approached her table. "Jamie Lincoln?" I asked, my voice more shaky than I would have liked. She looked up from her tablet, analyzing me with a sharp gaze. "Yes, and you are—" "Sophia," I answered simply. "Sophia Mason." Her face changed instantly. Recognition flashed in her eyes, followed by an expression I couldn't decipher. Alarm? Interest? Caution? "Alexander's widow," she said, not as a question, but a statement. "Please, sit." I obeyed, feeling strangely intimidated. Up close, I noticed Jamie was younger than she seemed from a distance. She was probably my age. Her eyes were perceptive, calculating. "How did you find me?" she asked directly. I hesitated for a moment. Then I decided on honesty. I took Eleanor's cell phone out of my bag and put it on the table. "My mother-in-law forgot this at my house yesterday. I saw messages from you coming in on a contact saved as Alexander." Jamie looked at the phone as if it were a bomb about to explode. Her eyes narrowed. You read the messages? Yes, I admitted. And after that, Eleanor told me about the accident, about what she did to my husband. Jamie looked around discreetly, checking if anyone could hear us. She leaned forward. Eleanor told you? She just confessed that she murdered her own son? There was disbelief in her voice. She admitted she sent Phil to take care of the technical details, that Alexander had discovered diversions in the companies and was threatening to report her. A bitter smile formed on Jamie's lips. Typical Eleanor, always distancing herself from the crime, subcontracting the dirty work. You were his partner, I stated, remembering what Eleanor had said. In an affordable housing project. Jamie nodded slowly. Alexander was brilliant. He had vision. He wanted to use some of the company's profits to create quality, accessible housing. Your mother-in-law obviously thought that was a waste of resources. And why are you receiving money from her? I asked, getting straight to the point. Is it blackmail? I prefer to call it compensation, Jamie replied without denying it. After Alexander died, Eleanor tried to take my share of the project. I had proof of the partnership, so she couldn't, but I also had suspicions. About the accident? What kind of suspicions? Jamie took a sip of her coffee before answering. Alexander called me the night before his death. He was agitated. He said he had discovered something serious in the main company's finances. He said he had proof, documents that would incriminate his mother in $1 million fund diversion scheme. This coincided with Alexander's behavior that last night at home. And do you have concrete proof of her involvement in his death? I asked, hope rising in my chest. I have enough to scare her and guarantee my monthly payments, Jamie responded with a shrug. But for a court? I don't know. And you're satisfied with that? I couldn't hide the indignation in my voice. Receiving money from the woman who killed your partner instead of seeking justice? For the first time, Jamie seemed uncomfortable. Business is business, Sophia. I'm sorry about Alexander, truly. He was a good man. But what could I do? I didn't have concrete proof, just suspicions. And Eleanor is powerful. She has contacts everywhere. I stared at her with a mixture of disappointment and frustration. Alexander deserves justice. I need your help, Jamie. I need to know exactly what happened, and I need evidence I can take to the police. Jamie was silent for a long moment, studying me intently. Finally, she sighed. Look, I'm not your enemy, Sophia. I also want Eleanor to pay for what she did, but we need to be smart about this. I'm listening, I replied, feeling a spark of hope. Eleanor made sure to clean up any direct trace of the crime. But Phil, her chauffeur, he's the weak link. He was the one who bribed the mechanic to sabotage Alexander's car brakes. How do you know that? Jamie opened her purse and took out a small USB flash drive. Because I have this, a recording from the security camera at the garage where Alexander's car was serviced the night before the accident. It shows Phil paying the mechanic. It's not definitive proof, but it's a start. I looked at that small object with fascination, the first concrete proof of the conspiracy that killed Alexander. Why are you helping me? I asked, looking at the USB flash drive in my hand. You were happy just receiving Eleanor's payments. What changed? Jamie looked away for a moment, something in her expression hardening. I got tired of this game, she finally admitted. At first I thought I could live with the arrangement. After all, it was lucrative and kept me safe. But Eleanor's veiled threats are constant, the feeling of always looking over my shoulder, and, she paused, seeming to weigh her words, Alexander deserved more than that. I put the USB flash drive in my bag as if it were a precious treasure. In a way, it was. What do I do now? Take this straight to the police? Jamie shook her head. It wouldn't be enough. It's circumstantial evidence at best. We need more. We need Phil to confess, or better yet, for Eleanor to confess. And how would we get that? I asked, feeling lost. A calculating gleam appeared in Jamie's eyes. so similar to Eleanor's that it sent a shiver down my spine. "I have a plan," she said, leaning closer, "but it's going to require courage. Eleanor thinks I'm on her side, that our deal is still on. We can use that to our advantage." As she spoke, a daring plan began to take shape. We would use Eleanor's cell phone to lure Phil to an isolated location, an old industrial warehouse that belonged to the companies, but was decommissioned on the outskirts of Chicago. Jamie would convince Eleanor that I had discovered additional proof and that we needed to resolve the problem permanently. "Eleanor won't come personally for something so dirty," Jamie explained. "She'll send Phil, but she'll be monitoring everything closely, probably through calls with him." "And if he tries to hurt me?" I asked, fear rising inside me. "You won't be alone," Jamie guaranteed. "I have trusted contacts who will provide security. We'll hide cameras and microphones throughout the warehouse. The idea is to provoke a confession, record everything. Hopefully Phil will implicate Eleanor directly." The plan seemed like something out of a suspense movie, not the life of a middle-class widow who, until a year ago, led a quiet existence. But I was no longer that woman. Alexander's death and now, these revelations, had transformed me. "When?" I simply asked. "Tonight," Jamie replied. "The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes for you. Eleanor knows you discovered her secret. She won't let it go." I agreed. I exchanged phone numbers with Jamie and settled the final details. She would give me precise instructions via text on how to get to the warehouse without being detected. As we said goodbye, Jamie held my arm. "Sophia, understand one thing. After we start this, there's no turning back. Eleanor is dangerous. If our plan fails—" "I know," I interrupted, "but I can't let her get away with what she did to Alexander." I drove home, being careful not to be followed, feeling the weight of the USB flash drive in my bag and fear in my heart. The following hours were torture. I checked the windows and doors countless times, startled by every noise. I mentally rehearsed what I would say when I confronted Phil. How would I react if things went wrong? Around the hour of 5:00 p.m., I received a text from Jamie with the exact coordinates and instructions to reach the location. I was to wear dark clothing, leave my cell phone at home so as not to be tracked, and take a regular cab instead of using apps that could leave digital trails. I put on a black outfit, tied my hair back, and put on a dark face mask and large glasses to make recognition difficult. At the last moment, I decided to take with me a small pair of sewing scissors that I kept in a drawer. They were not a real weapon, but they gave me some sense of security. The cab dropped me off a few blocks from the warehouse, as we had agreed. I walked the rest of the way, my body tense, alert to any suspicious movement. Night had already fallen, and that industrial area of the Chicago metropolitan area was practically deserted after business hours. The warehouse was an old building of metal and concrete, with high, dirty windows. Jamie was waiting for me at the back entrance, along with two serious-looking men wearing dark clothes. "Private security guards," she explained briefly. "Everything is ready," she informed me, guiding me inside. Cameras were installed at strategic points, high-sensitivity microphones near the main entrance. The car is parked on the other side of the street, hidden behind that pile of containers. "You'll stay there with me, monitoring everything. And when Phil arrives?" I asked. "We'll let him enter and wait a little. When he seems anxious enough, you go in. The guards will be positioned to intervene if necessary, but the ideal is for him not to see them until it's too late to run." We crossed the empty warehouse, our voices echoing in the large space. Jamie showed me the tablet where we could watch the images from the hidden cameras. Then we positioned ourselves in the car, a dark sedan with tinted windows, from where we could observe the warehouse entrance without being seen. Now it was a waiting game. Jamie had sent a message to Eleanor through her cell phone, which was still in my possession. The message, supposedly from Jamie, read, "Emergency. Sophia discovered everything. She has proof of the involvement in Alexander's death. She is threatening to go to the police. Meet me at the industrial area warehouse to resolve this. Come alone and bring that document we discussed. Do not reply to this message. Just come." "Eleanor won't come personally," Jamie explained. "She'll send Phil to deal with the problem. The document is our code for something he needs to bring, probably a weapon or something to simulate another accident." The hours passed slowly. Every minute felt like an eternity as we waited in the tense silence of the car. Jamie checked the tablet regularly, ensuring the cameras were still working. Finally, around the hour of 10 p.m., headlights cut through the darkness. A black car, the same one I had seen with Phil at the wheel the night before, approached the warehouse slowly. "It's him," I whispered, feeling my heart pound. Phil parked and stayed inside the vehicle for a few minutes, probably checking the perimeter. When he finally got out, I noticed he was carrying a small briefcase under his arm. He looked in all directions before entering the warehouse. "Is he armed?" I asked, trying to see better in the darkness. "Probably," Jamie responded calmly, "but our men are too. Don't worry." On the tablet, we watched Phil enter the warehouse. He called out for Eleanor, his voice echoing in the empty space. He seemed tense, nervous. "It's your time," Jamie said, squeezing my shoulder lightly. "Remember, we need him to confess. Mention the accident. Ask about the brakes. Provoke him about Eleanor giving the orders." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. This was the moment I had prepared for, or tried to prepare for, over the last 24 hours. The opportunity to get justice for Alexander. "I'm ready," I said, opening the car door. The interior of the warehouse was cold and damp, with the characteristic smell of abandonment. Phil was in the middle of the empty space, illuminated only by the moonlight coming through the high windows. He looked small and fragile there, despite his stiff posture. "Miss Eleanor?" he called out again, his voice trembling slightly. "She's not here," I replied, stepping out of the shadows. Phil turned sharply, his eyes widening as he recognized me despite the face mask and glasses. He backed away instinctively. "Mrs. Mason? What's going on? Where is Miss Eleanor?" "Eleanor isn't coming, Phil," I said, keeping my voice firm despite the fear. "It's just you and me, and that briefcase you brought. What's in it? Another way to silence me? How did you silence Alexander?" He paled, clutching the briefcase against his chest like a shield. "I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. Miss Eleanor sent me to pick up some documents, that's all." "Lie," I accused, taking a step toward him. "We know everything, Phil, about how you sabotaged Alexander's car brakes, about the money you paid the mechanic. We have the security camera footage from the garage." That hit him like a physical blow. He staggered backward, panic evident on his face. "No, it wasn't my fault," he stammered. "I only did what I was told." "Who told you, Phil? Say it." My voice came out stronger than I expected, fueled by the rage growing inside me. "Miss Eleanor," he finally admitted, defeated. "She said it was necessary, that Mr. Alexander was going to destroy everything she built." My whole body was shaking, but I continued to press. "How did you do it? Tell me every detail." The words began to pour out of him like a desperate confession. "She gave me money to pay Josiah, a mechanic I knew. I went to the garage late at night after it closed. Josiah damaged the brake line, made it look like natural wear and tear. It was only supposed to be an accident. It wasn't supposed for Mr. Alexander to die." His last words sounded like a plea, as if he could absolve himself of guilt by claiming that death wasn't the final goal. "But he died, Phil. My husband died because you chose to obey criminal orders. And now Eleanor wants to kill me too, doesn't she? Is that why you're here?" Phil looked at the briefcase in his hands, guilt written on every line of his face. "A sedative," he admitted in a low voice. "She said to make it look like a suicide, that you were distraught since Mr. Alexander's death, that no one would suspect." It was then I heard a faint noise behind me. Before I could turn, a familiar voice cut through the air. "You incompetent idiot!" Eleanor was standing at the side entrance of the warehouse, an imposing figure even in the semi-darkness. Her face was contorted in a mask of cold fury. Beside her was a man I didn't recognize, holding something that looked like a gun. My blood ran cold. The plan had failed. Eleanor shouldn't have been there. "Ms. Eleanor?" Phil looked as surprised as I was. I thought, "Shut up," she ordered, walking into the warehouse. "I thought after so many years working for me you would be more discreet, more efficient. But no. At the first sign of pressure you confess everything." Her gaze turned to me, icy and calculating. "And you, Sophia, did you really think you could corner me like this? That I wouldn't realize such an obvious trap?" "How did you know?" I managed to ask, my throat dry with fear. A slight smile curled her lips. "The message. Jamie would never call me for a personal meeting. Our deals are always remote, bank transfers, and she would never, ever mention the accident in writing. It was amateur, Sophia." My mind was racing. Where were Jamie's guards? Where was Jamie herself? As if reading my thoughts, Eleanor continued, "If you're looking for your new friend, don't worry. She's fine, accompanied by my men in the car where you were hiding. Jamie was always too ambitious for her own good." I realized we were lost. The plan had backfired on us. Eleanor was smarter. She had more resources. She was always one step ahead. "You killed your own son," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice despite the fear. "How can you live with yourself after that?" Eleanor looked at me as if I were a naive child. "Business is business, Sophia. Alexander chose to stand in my way. It was a business decision, nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" I repeated, incredulous. "He was your son?" "He was a traitor," she replied coldly. "He discovered my arrangements with certain companies, diversions necessary to maintain the empire I built. He threatened to turn me over to the authorities, destroy everything. What other option did I have?" Her coldness was terrifying. There was no remorse, only calculation. To Eleanor, Alexander was just a variable in her equation of power and money. "And now," I asked, "are you going to kill me too? Do you think that will end your problems?" Eleanor sighed as if bored with the conversation. "Frankly, Sophia, you caused more trouble than you were worth. You could have continued your life quietly, with the generous annuity I granted you. But you had to meddle." She made a slight gesture to the man beside her, who took a step forward. I recognized him then. He was one of the guards from the company building, another employee loyal to Eleanor, willing to do her dirty work. "It will be quick, I promise," Eleanor said almost gently. "Phil, give me the syringe." Phil, visibly trembling, handed her the briefcase. Eleanor opened it and removed a syringe filled with a clear liquid. "An efficient cocktail," she explained. "It will look like a heart attack. The poor widow, consumed by grief, succumbed to the pain of loss. How tragic." I backed away instinctively, my hand finding the small scissors I had hidden in my pocket. A useless object against a gun, but it was all I had. "You won't get away with this," I said, trying to buy time. "Jamie has copies of all the proof. If anything happens to me, everything goes to the police." Eleanor laughed. "A weak bluff, Sophia. Jamie is too smart to leave proof lying around. She knows the value of insurance, but she also knows the value of being the only one to possess it." I was trapped. My eyes desperately scanned the warehouse, looking for an exit. It was then I noticed a movement in the shadows behind Eleanor. I kept my gaze fixed on her, trying not to give away what I had seen. "Before you do this," I said, my voice calmer now, "I want to know one thing. Alexander's will, you forged it, didn't you, to take control of everything?" Eleanor seemed slightly surprised by the change of subject, but she replied with pride. Of course. Alexander had left everything to you, the sentimental fool. But it was easy to replace the document while you were lost in grief. And the diversions? How much exactly did you steal from the company? A smug smile formed on her face. Millions, darling, over decades. Over enough to ensure no one could ever touch me. I have judges, politicians, everyone on my payroll. As she spoke, the shadows behind her moved slowly. I recognized Jamie's 2 guards stealthily approaching. There was still hope. And do you really think you can silence everyone? I continued, keeping her attention on me. Phil, me, Jamie, how many more people will you have to kill to protect your secret? Eleanor shrugged. As many as necessary. In the business world, Sophia, only the strong survive. And I... Her words were interrupted by the sound of sirens in the distance, quickly approaching. Blue and red lights began to illuminate the high windows of the warehouse. Eleanor's face transformed into pure fury. "What did you do?" she hissed. In that instant, Jamie's guards advanced from the shadows. One of them immobilized the armed man with surprising speed, while the other grabbed Phil, who didn't even attempt to resist. Eleanor was momentarily paralyzed, the syringe still in her hand. Then, with a quick movement, she lunged toward me. I managed to dodge her, but I felt the needle graze my arm. Before she could try again, Jamie emerged from the side entrance, limping slightly, but with a triumphant expression. "It's over, Eleanor," she declared. The sound of several police cars parking outside filled the air. Armed officers stormed the warehouse, shouting orders. "Police! Everyone freeze!" Everything happened very quickly after that. Eleanor, Phil, and the guard were handcuffed and led outside. Jamie approached me, a slight bruise forming on her face. "We did it," she said, exhausted but satisfied. "We recorded everything. Her confession about the will, the diversions, everything." "How did you escape?" I asked, still trying to understand how we had survived. "Your men weren't as good as mine," she replied with a tired smile. "And I had already called the police even before we entered the warehouse. An extra insurance policy, let's call it that." An officer approached us, asking us to accompany the others to give a statement. As we walked outside, I watched Eleanor being put into the police car. For a brief moment, our eyes met. There was no longer arrogance in her eyes, only a cold rage and the understanding that finally she had been defeated. The following months were a roller coaster of emotions and legal procedures. The case was widely reported. Renowned businesswoman accused of ordering the murder of her own son. It transformed our family tragedy into a public scandal. Eleanor's recorded confession in the warehouse, added to Phil's detailed statement and the security camera footage from the garage, provided irrefutable proof. The investigations revealed the extent of Eleanor's crimes. In addition to Alexander's murder, there was a fund diversion scheme that spanned over 2 decades, involving bribes to politicians and public officials. The trial was swift and relentless. Eleanor was sentenced to life in prison for aggravated murder, attempted murder, and financial crimes. Phil received a lesser sentence for collaborating with the investigation, but would still face long years behind bars. As for me, I had to learn to live with a new reality. Alexander's original will was found in Eleanor's secret safe, confirming that I was the true heir to the majority of the assets and the company. Suddenly, I found myself leading a business empire I never aspired to command. Jamie became a valuable ally in that process. Her business experience and knowledge of the affordable housing project she had developed with Alexander were fundamental for me to begin to understand the company's operation. On an autumn afternoon, 6 months after Eleanor's imprisonment, I met Jamie at the same coffee shop where we had planned our confrontation. Now it was a friendly business meeting. "The investors are excited about the affordable housing project," Jamie commented, analyzing some charts on her tablet. Following Alexander's original vision, we managed to reduce costs without compromising quality. The first units will be ready in less than 1 year. I smiled, feeling a mix of pride and melancholy. He would be happy. It was everything he dreamed of accomplishing. "You're doing an excellent job, Sophia," Jamie said sincerely. "Taking over the company presidency wasn't something you were prepared for, but you're handling it admirably." "I'm still learning," I admitted, "but I feel like I'm on the right track. Cleaning up the company's name, undoing the damage caused by Eleanor, realizing the projects Alexander valued. It's almost like keeping him alive, in a way." Our relationship had evolved into something between friendship and professional partnership. It would never be completely close. There was too much pain and complexity in our shared history, but there was mutual respect. After the meeting, I decided to do something I had avoided for months. I drove to the cemetery where Alexander was buried. It was the first time I had visited his grave since discovering the truth about his death. The day was clear, with the late afternoon sun casting long shadows among the headstones. I walked slowly until I found the spot, a simple marble plaque with his name and dates. I placed the flowers I had brought, lilies, his favorite, and sat on the grass next to the grave. "We did it, my love," I whispered, feeling the tears I had repressed for so long finally find their way down my face. "Eleanor is in prison." The truth came out. "Your company is clean now, and we're moving forward with that affordable housing project that meant so much to you." A gentle wind rustled the leaves of the nearby trees like a silent response. "I miss your presence so much," I continued, my voice choked. "Every day. But now, at least, there's some comfort in knowing that justice was done, that your legacy will continue." I spent almost an hour there, sharing everything that had happened in the last few months with Alexander. It was cathartic, as if I could finally put an end to that painful chapter of my life. When I stood up to leave, I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The pain of loss was still there. It probably always would be, but now there was room for other emotions too: pride, determination, maybe even hope. In the following months, I immersed myself in the work of transforming the company. I removed executives involved in Eleanor's schemes, established new financial transparency protocols, and prioritized the social projects that Alexander valued so much. The housing development, which we named the Alexander Mason Project, became a model for accessible and sustainable housing in the Chicago metropolitan area. When the first families began moving into their new homes, we organized a small inauguration ceremony. As I cut the symbolic ribbon, I looked up at the clear sky of that spring morning and smiled. Somewhere, Alexander was smiling too. A journalist approached me after the ceremony, microphone in hand. "Mrs. Mason, how do you feel realizing your late husband's dream, especially after everything you've been through?" I thought for a moment before answering. "I feel that life sometimes takes us down paths we never imagined traveling. When I found that forgotten cell phone on my sofa a year ago, I had no idea it would lead me to discover such a painful truth, but also an opportunity to seek justice and continue Alexander's legacy." "And regarding Eleanor, have you visited her in prison?" I shook my head. Some wounds are too deep to be healed with words. I learned that justice and revenge are different things. I no longer carry hatred for her, only the certainty that she is paying for what she did. The reporter seemed satisfied with the answer, but asked one last question. "What's next for you, Sophia Mason?" I looked at the housing development, at the families who were already starting to make that place their home, at the future we were building. "Continuing," I replied simply. "Continuing to build, grow, learn. Alexander taught me that we can use the power of business to do good. That will always be the focus of our company, while I am at its head." That night, alone at home, I opened a bottle of wine that Alexander and I had saved for a special occasion. I poured a glass for myself and placed another beside it in his memory. Sitting on the balcony watching the stars, I thought about how life could change in an instant. A forgotten cell phone, a photo on the screen, a revealing message, and nothing was ever the same. The pain of betrayal and loss would never completely disappear, but now there was room for something else, for purpose, for a new beginning, for maybe one day, even happiness. I raised my glass to the starry sky. To you, my love, to justice, to new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, the smile that came to my lips was not forced or melancholic. It was real, genuine, a reflection of the peace I was finally beginning to find. 3 years passed since that fateful night when I discovered the truth about Alexander's death. Time, that ruthless and generous teacher, slowly transformed my grief into something more bearable, a scar that, although permanent, no longer hurts with every movement. The company, now renamed Morales Group, thrived under a new business philosophy. The housing project we started expanded to 3 cities, providing decent housing for hundreds of families. Every new inauguration was like a small tribute to Alexander's vision. That morning, as I was getting ready for another day of work, I received an official envelope. It was a notification from the penitentiary system. Eleanor had requested a visit from me. After 3 years of absolute silence, she wanted to see me. My first reaction was to refuse. What could we possibly have to talk about after everything? But something inside me, curiosity, a need for closure, or perhaps just the desire to understand, made me accept. The women's prison was a cold and oppressive place, despite attempts at humanization. I was led through gray corridors to a visiting room with fixed tables and plastic chairs. When Eleanor entered, escorted by a guard, I barely recognized her. 3 years of prison had left deep marks. Her hair, once impeccably dyed and styled, was gray and lifeless. Her face, once firm and authoritative, was marked by deep wrinkles, but her eyes, those cold and calculating eyes, remained the same. "Sophia," she said as she sat across from me. Her voice was hoarse, as if she spoke little. "Thank you for coming." "Why did you call me here, Eleanor?" I asked directly, without pleasantries. She studied me for a moment before responding. "You look different, stronger. The company must be doing well under your command." I didn't answer. I wasn't there to discuss business. Eleanor seemed to understand my silence. "I called you because I'm dying, Sophia. Cancer, terminal stage. The doctors give me a few months, at most." The news took me by surprise. I didn't expect to feel compassion, but something akin to it crossed my heart. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Don't be sorry," she retorted with a slight bitter smile. "That's not why I'm telling you. I just want to put some things in order before I go." Eleanor spread her wrinkled hands on the table. "I never regretted anything in my life, Sophia. Every decision I made was calculated, thought out to protect what I built. But there's something about facing death that makes you look back differently." I remained silent, watching her intently. It was hard to believe anything that came from that woman. "Alexander was like his father," she continued, a distant gleam in her eyes. "An idealist. He believed he could change the world. I always knew he would eventually turn against me one day. It was just a matter of time." "That doesn't justify what you did," I countered, keeping my voice firm. "He was your son." In my twisted mind, it was him or me, Eleanor admitted, without an ounce of emotion in her voice. The empire I built, the power I conquered, were always more important than any family bond. I realized too late that I was wrong. I studied her face, searching for any sign of genuine remorse, but only found the same calculating mask as always. "If you called me here expecting forgiveness, Eleanor, you're wasting your time." She laughed, a harsh sound that quickly turned into a dry cough. Forgiveness? No, Sophia. I know I don't deserve it, nor am I asking for it. I called you for a more practical reason. Eleanor took a thin envelope she had brought with her and pushed it across the table toward me. What is this? I asked, without touching the envelope. A final will, legally validated, confirming that all my personal assets, those not confiscated by the state, must be allocated to the Alexander Mason Project. This surprised me. Why? It's not redemption, she responded honestly. It's just an attempt to balance the scales, however minimally. Perhaps the money I used to destroy can now be used to build. I reluctantly took the envelope. I didn't know what to feel in that moment. It wasn't forgiveness, nor understanding, just a strange sense that a cycle was closing. Is there anything else? Eleanor continued. In the main safe of the company, behind the painting in the president's office, there is a diary. My diary. It contains details of all the schemes I carried out over the years, names, dates, amounts. It can be useful for recovering more diverted funds. Why are you telling me this now? Eleanor looked at her wrinkled hands. Because death has a peculiar way of clarifying things. I don't want my mistakes to be buried with me. Our conversation didn't last much longer. There was no forgiveness to be offered, nor redemption to be found in those final words. When I stood up to leave, Eleanor called my name one last time. Sophia, Alexander would be proud of what you did with the company. I paused for a moment, without turning around. I know, I replied simply, and continued walking. Eleanor died 2 months later, alone in a prison infirmary. I didn't attend the sparse funeral, but I sent flowers. Not for her, but for what she could have been if she had chosen a different path. The diary was exactly where she had indicated. The information contained therein allowed us to recover millions of dollars in diverted funds, which were directed to the expansion of the company's social projects. Life went on. The pain of losing Alexander never completely disappeared, but I learned to live with it, to transform it into fuel to accomplish the good he always wanted to bring to the world. On a sunny spring afternoon, 5 years after the discovery of the cell phone that changed everything, we inaugurated the largest unit of the Alexander Mason Project yet, a complex that combined accessible housing, a community center, a school, and a green area in a previously abandoned neighborhood. Jamie was by my side during the inauguration ceremony. Our professional partnership had flourished over the years, based on mutual respect and a shared goal. He would be proud, she said, as we watched families exploring their new homes. Yes, he would, I agreed, feeling a peace that took years to find. That night I returned home, no longer the house I had shared with Alexander, but a new apartment that represented my new beginning. On the coffee table was a picture frame with the photo of my smiling husband, wearing his favorite blue shirt. I looked at that image that had once caused me so much shock and pain when it appeared on the screen of a forgotten cell phone. Now it brought only sweet memories, the memory of a love that, even interrupted by tragedy, had changed my life forever. I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset color the sky. Life had taken me down paths I never imagined traveling, from pain to discovery, from discovery to the fight for justice, and from justice to rebuilding. It hadn't been easy. There were days when the weight of loneliness seemed unbearable, nights when I woke up screaming with nightmares about that night in the warehouse. But every emotional scar was a reminder that I had survived, that I had found strength where I thought none existed. The truth behind Alexander's death had been revealed by a simple accident. A cell phone forgotten on a sofa, a photo on the screen, a revealing message. What would my life have been like if Eleanor hadn't forgotten her phone that day? I probably would never have known the truth. I would continue living in ignorance, believing the lie of the accident. Sometimes destiny pushes us to the abyss just to show us that we have wings to fly. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the darkening sky. To you, Alexander, for everything you taught me, for everything we are still building together, even though you're not here to see it. And I smiled, no longer with sadness, but with the serenity of someone who finally found their way after the storm.